Welcome into the Cowboys Report. Tom Downey here. Dallas has released its first officially unofficial depth chart before the preseason and before they did the 3 signings that went down yesterday afternoon, which I hope you guys checked out that video here. We'll break down some of my notable takeaways, run through all of the depth charts as well, and point out what's right, what's interesting, and what I don't think is right at all. Before we get to that, we are narrowly ahead in the August-like battle against the Raiders report. Let's make sure we don't let them win. They beat us in June. We beat them in July. It's the old rubber match. Like today's video, and make sure you're liking every video here on the Cowboys Report. All right, number 1 depth chart takeaway for me, Ezekiel Elliott is starting at running back. And I'm not actually surprised by that because if you've been watching the show, we've been putting Zeke at RB1. That's not to say I agree. That's not to say I think that Elliott is going to be back to prime Elliott or that Rico Dowdle isn't going to eventually take over as the true lead back for this team. But always follow the money. Always follow the investments. Elliott is getting paid more than anybody else on this roster. I think there is some semblance of, trust in the veteran, quote unquote. Elliott, however, look, it's just not the same guy, and that's okay. If you put him in the right role, this is doable. It is not necessarily a bad thing to give him a certain amount of carries in a certain role. If you try to force feed him 230 carries again this year, that's not going to go over very well. My main issue with this running back room is there isn't a dude. I think Rico Dowdle should get more touches than what we saw last year. When he has been healthy, which does remain a valid concern, by the way, folks, he's been pretty impactful. He has been. He's shown flashes. Got to stay healthy. Got to do more. The rest of the depth chart broke down like this, by the way. Royce Freeman was RB3, Malik Davis, Deuce Vaughn. Of note, Freeman and Vaughn are both at least a little bit nicked up right now. Hunter Lipke wasn't listed as a fullback, but I'm going to put him in there as a fullback because he's going to get fullback reps. Then Snoop Connor and Nate Pete rounding out that room. So first question of the day. Does Ezekiel Elliott lead the Cowboys in rushing yards this year? Why for yes and for no? Go vote at the pinned comment of today's show, especially if the ad comes on YouTube. Number 2, Chuma Adoga starting at left tackle. I would not read too much into this. In fact, I refuse to acknowledge it as the reality. I will not put Adoga at left tackle on the depth chart graphics that we show until it happens in an actual game. Because I just don't believe it. Because this is me taking a stand and trying to bully the Cowboys into starting Tyler Guyton. Because he's clearly better. We all have eyeballs. Guyton is way better than Chuma Adoga already. Adoga's been getting worked by Micah Parsons. Guyton's held his ground. Other couple notable tweaks here that we actually will reflect to an extent in the future. TJ Bass was listed at left guard. I think that was just to get him as a top backup somewhere. Because they have Josh Ball working at right guard, could be both center and at right guard. I think in reality, it's just TJ Bass at right guard ahead of Josh Ball and Nathan Thomas as the backup there at left guard, quote unquote. Also, Earl Bostic over at right tackle on the depth chart. They've also cross-trained guys, so it's how it typically goes on the offensive line. All right, number 3. I think there's at least one wrong position on this list. And that stands out to me at the defensive end / defensive tackle room. So I'll make note, they had 2 defensive end starters. That's accurate, but there's so many bodies. I just added a 3rd spot and put it in the order it was going. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Marshawn Kneeland, Chauncey Golston was listed at defensive end. Then Tyrus Sweet, Darrell Johnson, Shaka Toney, Al-Qadim Muhammad as well, as they try to replace some notable snaps lost with Sam Williams. But Golston's pretty much been working as a defensive tackle in training camp. Now, the Cowboys did have Viliami Fehoko at DT. They also balanced it. I think really Mozzie Smith, Carl Davis, Justin Rogers, Denzel Daxon, really all more nose guard types. The recently signed Albert Huggins, who of course was not on this depth chart yet because that move has not been processed yet by the NFL transaction wire. Probably won't be until today. Later today, I should say. I think you have to balance things here. I think that Golston is really getting DT reps, and we'll see about Fehoko, what his role looks like. He faces a pretty critical preseason coming up. But I think Golston is going to be, when we get to actual games, on that DT depth chart, not so much the defensive end. All right, folks, today's show is made possible by Rocket Money. Did you know that most Americans think they spend about $62 per month on subscriptions, but the real number is closer to $300? That is thousands of dollars a year, half of which you've probably forgotten about. I had a phone bill I was getting double charged for, found out thanks to Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and helps cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. With Rocket Money, you have a clear view of your subscriptions and a clear view of your expenses as well. You can see them all in one place. If you see something you don't want, boom, cancel it with just a few taps, thanks to Rocket Money. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has hit a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/Cowboys. That's rocketmoney.com/Cowboys. Link will be in the comment section and the description of today's show. Here's a stunner. Marist Liufau listed as a starter along the linebacker depth chart ahead of DeMarvion Overshown. Look, the reality is these unofficial depth charts, sometimes they're just wrong, and this is just wrong. There's no way around it. Again, updated to not reflect Darius Harris and Nick Vigil signings from yesterday. It was Marist Liufau. I'm adding the positions because we know that Overshown's working a weak side linebacker. We know Kendricks is the Mike. That leaves Clark as the strong side linebacker. Plus Harvey fits that mold as well. Look, come on. Overshown's going to start over Liufau, barring injury. Like, that's been this team's plan the entire time. So I think Liufau's like your first sub at any spot when needed. And if you go 2 linebacker sets, it's probably Clark first one up behind Liufau and Kendricks. I think it's just wrong. Again, they're unofficial. It's not really the coaching staff that does these. I think this is just wrong. So who starts? ML for Marist Liufau. DO for DeMarvion Overshown. Sound off in the comments of today's video. Let's talk return options, because this is kind of something I was intrigued to see. What the return options. They listed 4 guys on each kick returner and punt returner, but 3 of them overlapped. Kavontae Turpin, obviously. Deuce Vaughn, which isn't a huge surprise. Rico Dowdle as a kick return option. David Durden as a backup at both. And Jalen Cropper as the punt returner. Quick aside, by the way, Jalen Cropper is still being listed by the Cowboys at 6'2", 215. He is not. He is barely 5'11", under 180. Ludicrous. It's just they made a typo and they refused to fix it, and I'm mad at them for it. I am very excited to see what the return options look. Deuce Vaughn's banged up. He might not be out there. I think that was a big path to him potentially making the 53-man roster. David Durden could impress in that role. Could Jalen Cropper do it? I think the Cowboys want a second kick return man. If Dowdle's playing a key role on offense as a running back, are they going to put him back there as a kick returner? I think that's a secret spot, sneaky spot that's open and up for grabs. So do not miss our first Cowboys watch party. August 11th against the Rams. We will be live for it. We'll have some fun games, and of course have the game for you as well. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/@CowboysTV. All right, the other spots we didn't mention, I want to run through here one time. Nothing that really stands out as a surprise to me. Quarterback is Dak, then Rush, then Trey Lance. That is how it would be if a game began today. You'll see a lot of Lance in the preseason, thank goodness. Wide receiver, look, the Cowboys did a 5-man unit, a 5-man unit, and then a 3-man unit, which I thought was kind of dumb. So I'm just going to merge them all together kind of in order of what it would be from receiver 1 to 2 to 3. Nothing really shocking there. Brooks and Turpin were flipped. Some of the backups are up for grabs in the conversations. I think Cam Johnson was kind of silly high, but it's not a big deal there. He's not really going to make the roster at all. So minor adjustments at wide receiver, but nothing too shocking. Corey Crooms, by the way, did clear waivers after being waive injured. He's on IR now. Tight end has been the order we've had it in, although I don't know if Hendershot's actually tight end 3. I think feels like Fant, Stevens, or Spanford are probably a little bit more likely to make that 53-man roster, but we'll see on that front. I want you guys, before we get to the defensive ones we haven't discussed here, rate the Cowboys roster. Scale it from 1 to 99. It's kind of Madden style, right? Where do you think this Cowboys roster should be rated? Let me know in the comments of today's show. All right, corner. Nothing overly shocking here. Deshaun Wright ahead of Kalen Carson, but Eric Scott behind Carson and Wright, which I think is accurate. Carson's making this team. There's 4 corners. Cowboys might have room for one spot between Wright and Scott and Butler, and maybe Kamon Hall shocks everybody, or Josh DeBerry, or they just go with Israel Mukuamu as like the 5th guy and keep Goodwin and go light there. Mukuamu, by the way, listed at safety. Also, backups Julius Wood, Amani Johnson on that safety depth chart. I'm going to merge safety and free safety. They did not designate free safety, strong safety, but Hooker's your free, Wilson's your strong. So nothing overly shocking there. More excited to see who plays in the preseason, which we'll have a full preview on here on the show. So, again, make sure you guys are subscribed.